We'll be going over today some of the membership admin controls. So we'll be looking at the people manager, some of the setup process for managing your membership, and then a couple NIGP specific things about how to manage multi-user memberships. So you would call them like primary, secondary memberships or agencies. So we'll go over how to kind of like manage those and make sure that everything is set up correctly for you. We'll also take a look towards the tail end at email communication basics. We're not going to go too deep into like super customized emails, but we will take a look at how to at least communicate with your membership base, and then we'll also take a look at how to um, save those distribution lists. So you can save a list for mailing things out to people. And we'll also take a look at like what you can do, what you can put in the body of an email. You can get really, really custom with the way we send emails out. We're not going to get too deep into that. We'll just cover kind of the basics there. All right. Looks like we're still having one or two people join, but I'll go ahead and get started on the membership part. I'll let people know this is also being recorded, and so I will send the recording out after the training. And I believe the recording will be hosted on. I believe Ronnie will send something out. We're going to host the recording on one of the NIGP sites, so there should be access to the recording through one or all of the websites. We'll figure that out down the road, but if you miss something or you need to go back on something, as Ronnie just said in the chat that it'll be on your YouTube channel. So if you need to go back and watch something that we went over today again, you can always go find the recording of that video. All right. So the first thing we're talking about is going to be the kind of people manager and the membership management functions. I am currently on one of the NIGP test sites. This is kind of like the top level organization site, but all of the functions I'll be going over are the same site to site, so everything should work the same way. I'm currently logged in as an administrator. Most people, if not all the people on this call, should be some level of administrator or coordinator. If you log into your site and you don't see that control panel or favorites option in the upper right-hand corner, that means you're either logged in on a different account or you haven't been assigned admin privileges. That's something you can get in contact with other admins of your organization to talk about. But if you see your name, for me, my name is SA on that site means super admin. It's a ClubExpress thing. But ultimately, anywhere you see SA, just imagine that said your name. So I've got the option to see my profile information up here. The control panel and favorites options, those are options that kind of are only available to admins and coordinators. So if you see those, you know that you are currently logged in as an administrator. The first stop in any training is always hitting this control panel option. That's where we are right now. Whenever you click on control panel, it's going to load you into this screen right here. We organize our control panel into what we call tabs. We've got a large number of tabs. Today, we're going to spend most of our time in the people and communication tabs of the control panel. This is just how we organize the relatively large number of admin functions and controls. So we've organized them into this people section here. So that's where we're going to start out today, is in the people tab of the control panel. In the people tab of the control panel, and in fact, all the tabs of the control panel, we break it into kind of three sections, and getting a good grip of what these different sections mean can really help you kind of navigate through your site. So in this admin functions section, you'll see these are all of our administrative tools. So these are tools that are only available to admins and coordinators. And they're tools you might use to kind of like manage your website, manage your members. There's a lot of different kind of management tools here. The second kind of section of any control panel tab is the website modules section. These are modules that have an administrative side, so we can come here and administrate these modules from this side. But if it's a module, that means there's also a membership interactive portion to it. So these are things like committees. Sure, there's an administrative side to committees, but there's also a member side where members can go look and see who's on what committee. They can, request to join committees if they're set up certain ways. This is where we'll also find the membership directory and the business directory. So these are all things that, they have an admin control side, but they also have a member facing side. And then the third section down here, we put it at the bottom for a reason. These are all of our setup configurations. Just because they're at the bottom and because they're set up doesn't mean we'll never visit them, but they are, for the most part, set it and forget it kind of stuff. So these are things that once you configure your website, you'll come back to these a lot less frequently. These are the tools for configuring your website. And once you've set them up, oftentimes you don't come back quite nearly as often as you do to the admin functions or to the website modules. So starting off today, I'll go ahead and call out because some people ask like, "Hey, why is the control panel not alphabetized or what's the organization?" We try to keep our stuff organized in order of most useful. So you'll notice like the people tab is kind of front and center for the tabs. That's because it's the most commonly used tab. So we put it as the first default tab that pops up. Um, and then under admin functions, we have the first function that appears is the people manager. So that's the first function you should see when you're looking at your control panel. The reason for that is the people manager is by a country mile the most used function on ClubExpress. So when it comes to administrators wanting to manage their members, the people manager page, this is the most visited page for administrators on ClubExpress. That's why we put it as the very first option. So let's go ahead and hop into that and we'll take a look at what we can do there. When we click on the People Manager tool, we're going to be taken to the People Manager page and we'll see a number of options. And I'm going to go through and kind of like explain what we're seeing here. So the first thing we're going to see is these four buttons across the kind of like upper right-hand side. We have the add member button to, as an administrator, add in a new member into our database. There is a member facing side option for members to add themselves. But if you ever had a case where, someone paid in person or something like that, or someone, gave you their information manually and you needed to add them into the database, you could use this button to kind of go through the membership join process for someone else and add a new member to your database. We also have our member options. We'll circle back to this when we're talking specifically about levels. This is kind of the most useful tool under our membership options. This is a way to kind of change who is the primary or secondary member in an agency or in a multi-user membership. So this is where we can go in and say, the new primary is this person instead of this person. We also have the drop expired option. I am very careful with this. I don't really click this very often. Drop expired, when you click on it, it's going to give you the option to drop all of your members. And when we say drop, what that's kind of code word for is delete. ClubExpress doesn't delete a lot of data because every time that we've tried to allow people to delete things, we get a lot of calls saying, "Hey, I deleted something. Can you get it back for me?" So instead of deleting things, we drop them, and that kind of removes them from the database, but they're still retrievable if you need that information back. But you still don't want to drop people unless they are really intending to be dropped. So this drop expired members option, this would set all of our currently expired members since a certain date. So everyone who expired before yesterday would be set to the drop status. And that can be pretty dangerous because a lot of those members might, be planning to renew, they just didn't quite get to it in time. And, if we drop them, they're not going to be able to renew their membership at all. So you want to be very careful with that option. Unless you really, really need to, clear out your expired members, I usually ignore that button altogether. And then the last option is our cleanup tools. And this is just a section of this page. I won't go into detail on this, but this is a page where you can go and find if there's duplicates in your system. So if someone accidentally signed up, two times and they have two different active memberships, there's a lot of tools in that page where you can go and, compare people by first and last name, compare people by, email addresses, things like that to check and see if there are duplicate entries in your database. And then we get a similar thing for non-members. So ClubExpress also tracks non-members. So anytime I say non-member, that would usually refer to someone who is not a member of your organization, but they are interested or have interacted somehow. So maybe they attended an event, but they're not a member, or they signed up for your newsletter, anything like that. Anytime someone who is not a member interacts with your system, they will leave a trail, and that trail is kept on a non-member record. So we can manually add people, just like we do with members, we can add non-members as well into our database. And then we get similar options for our non-members as well. So we can do the same cleanup tools. We have the option, instead of dropping non-members, we have the option to import non-members. So if you collect a lot of information about non-members, so like you have a membership drive, or you go to a conference and collect first names and emails for people who want to get more information, you can import those in bulk. This is an option to, it kind of like outlines what you need to do in order to import those members. um and then the last thing we have here is the how heard, and this will change the different ways for you to set up how members heard, how non-members heard about your organization. So that would be various options there. So once we've gone through those buttons, the next thing we see on this page is our search area. And this is one of my favorite places on ClubExpress. This is a really, really powerful search engine for going through our members and non-members. When you land on this page for the very first time, you're going to see a few things. You're going to see the search for, and then you get the option of members, non-members, or both. When you land on it for the first time, it's always going to be default set to members because that is the most commonly used search is the member search. You can switch to searching for non-members in your database, or if the search you're doing doesn't matter, doesn't, if you don't care whether they're members or not, you're just looking for certain people, you can choose both, and the results you get when you search would include both members and non-members. But again, the default is going to be set to members. And then we have two filters set up, and this will be, you should see the same filters when you load into your site. You'll see the member status, and that filter is going to be set to active or expired. And you'll see the last name, and the last name field will be blank. For a member status filter here with active and expired, there are several other statuses that people can be in, and I'll run down the list really quickly. You've got things like dropped. We've already kind of talked about that a little bit. Dropped would be, kind of a substitute for deleted, but we just try not to, let that data slip. Keep in mind, if you set someone to dropped, that does mean that they're not getting any correspondence. They won't get emails. They can't log in. They can't renew their membership. They are effectively deleted. We are just holding on to their information should we need it in the future. Similarly, we've got frozen. It functions the same way dropped does. The only difference is kind of conceptual, being that frozen is the intent to bring them back. So if someone were to break an organization rule and you have to kind of like put them in timeout until you decide what to do with them, you could use that frozen status for them. And we'll talk about how to set someone to dropped or frozen or change their status. But frozen is, we're not sure what we're doing with that membership. We might be bringing them back so you can temporarily freeze them. We've got the bulk load option. Those of you who are already up and running with a ClubExpress website, you probably don't need to worry about this because your members have already been bulk loaded. You may have heard the term bulk load before when you were starting up with ClubExpress. This is the Excel spreadsheet that we have you load your members into the website for the very first time. And then we activate those members when your site is ready to go live. If you've already done that, you'll never use this again. So the bulk loaded status, that's only really for that first time load in. And they're kind of like put in a holding pattern until your site's ready to go live. Once we flip the switch for your site to go live, you won't see bulk loaded again. So you can kind of ignore that status. These next two only apply to new members. So new payment pending, that means there are a new member that has joined your site. But if your membership requires a payment, so if it costs, $30 to be a member of your NIGP, until they pay that, they will be sitting in this new payment pending status. So someone can go through the joining process. They plug all their information in, they set up a username and password, and then it takes them to the payment screen and asks them to pay for their payment. Most people, 9 times out of 10, once they get to that payment screen, they just pay and they immediately jump to the active status and all is good. Every once in a while, you'll have someone who gets to that payment page and they go, oh, I'll have to come back to this. I don't have my card on me. I don't have time. I'm going to mail a check, something like that. If for some reason they don't pay immediately, obviously they haven't paid their membership, so they wouldn't be expired, and they've never been active, so they haven't gone through the process, so they wouldn't quite qualify as expired either. So it's kind of this like, a secret other third thing that they have to kind of hang out in this status. Once they become active, they'll never go back to new payment pending. If their membership lapses and they haven't paid, they would then go to expired, and they'll bounce back and forth between active and expired for the length of their membership until maybe one day, they leave the organization, something like that, and they would become dropped. So, 99% of people are usually caught up in one of these two, active or expired, and that's why those are the two statuses selected by default. Similarly, we've got perspective, and perspective works the same way as new payment pending. The only difference is it's an extra barrier but before people can pay. So perspective means someone wanted to join your organization, and I'll show you where this configuration is elsewhere on the site. But if your organization requires approval, so if it is, if your organization requires approval in order to be a member, before they're approved, they will exist in this prospective status. So that is something that some people may not use. So if you do not require approval to join your organization, then this prospective status won't ever get used, and you can kind of ignore that just like you ignore bulk loaded. If you do require approval, then this would be turned on, and you would have to go and check and see if there are prospective members to be approved. And we'll talk about what it takes to approve them. So there's potentially two different statuses that someone might exist in before they become active. So if they need approval, they have to get approved first, and then if they owe a payment, they have to pay first. Once both of those criteria are met, then they would become active and start bouncing back and forth between active and expire over the years. The last status we see here is trial. This is another one similar to bulk loaded. I very rarely see websites use the trial option. So if you don't have trial memberships, you can just ignore this. It is a similar status to active. It just allows for people to get like a trial run of your website without paying. Honestly, most times I almost never see sites using that setting. So I usually just tune that one out. So just like with bulk loaded, you can kind of ignore that option. Again, when we land on this page for the first time, active and expired is going to be the filter setup because that's going to capture almost all of our members. The second filter here is last name. This last name field always starts blank, and you don't have to remove the field. If you don't enter anything here and you just hit search, it's going to show you your whole membership database. So right now I'm just looking at all of my active and expired members. If I hit search, it's not going to apply a filter as long as I leave it blank. If I want to find people with a last name starting with, F, there's Michael Fisher, our ClubExpress and NIGP contact. He's in the database here for management reasons. And we can see, I searched for last name F, and it's going to show me all the last names that start with F. So we can see Fisher there as a last name that starts with F. If I, get more specific with it, if I say FA, obviously Michael would get lost there because his last name does not start with FA. So it's always going to be filtering, searching for people, with names that start with whatever you put in there. If I hit reset here, it'll set my filters back to the way they were. So you'll see I hit reset and my last name filter gets removed there and it goes back to being blank. If I have set, multiple statuses to be searched for and I hit reset, those statuses get removed. So it's always going to set it back to searching for members, setting it back to active and expired, and a blank last name. Those aren't the only options that we can search for. If we want to get more granular with our search, we can come over here and hit this add filter button, and we can add additional filters. And you'll see it kind of, now we're searching for first name and username. We also aren't stuck searching for member status or last name. These are all also drop-down options. So if I don't care about their membership status, I care about, I want to search for only my primary members within my agency. I might switch that to member level. And now I get the options to search for primary, secondary, or tertiary members. So primary would be like the main person in charge of my agency. I can say I don't really care about their name. I do care about, their zip code. I'm looking for certain people in a certain area or people in a certain city. There's a ton of options. You can kind of get really specific with the searches here. I like the last three. These are my favorite. So I've had the option for recent addition. So I can look for people that joined my organization in the last 30, 60, or 90 days. It's a great way for me to go and check and see, hey, how many people are joining? Do I need to reach out to these people? I just want to see who's joined. It's a good way to keep an eye on that. The last three down here, we also have is in renewal cycle. And you'll notice depending on what filter I select, the criteria that I enter, it might be a text field, it might be a yes or no question. Is in renewal cycle. This is just asking, is this person due for renewal? So depending on what time frame your organization has set for when people can start renewing and getting renewal notices, once they start getting renewal notices, they are quote unquote in their renewal cycle, meaning it's time for them to renew. They may not be expired yet, but they're just in that time window, that time frame for membership renewal. So that's a way to say, hey, show me all my members who are due for membership renewal. And then my last favorite one that I like to point out here is with pending payment. And this is just show me everyone that owes me money. So if someone, has an outstanding payment, and that's any payment, not just their memberships, but that could be I signed up for an event and haven't paid. I said I was going to make a donation, but I never submitted that payment. So anyone who has incurred, created a transaction, incurred some sort of charge on the website, but has not yet paid it, if you search for with pending payment, those people would pop up. So you can come through here and you can change any number of filters to hit any criteria you want. And if you want a filter that's a little bit simpler, you say, I don't, none of this matters. All I want to know is the people that, have outstanding payments. I can come in here and I can remove every filter but that one and hit search. And we can see, the only person right now with an outstanding payment is Michael. So he shows up and we can tell that that's the person that currently is owing us, any sort of has an outstanding transaction. So that's the search field. Once you have kind of figured out what you're searching for and you hit that search button, you get those search results, we can do a few things with them. So I'm going to reset and get the full list again. So I reset back to that standard search. I'm going to hit search. And so now looking at all of my active expired members, no last name filter, I get the results of 7 people on this website. Most of your websites, you probably get a lot more than 7 results, but this is just a little top level site we can do testing on. Right now, we just have 7 people on here. What we can do with these search results, we can go into any of these individual people. We could go into Michael and we could do a number of things. So going kind of from left to right, we see a bit of a summary and then a few actions we can take. So we see their ClubExpress member number. So Michael is member number 6 on here. We see if you're set up the way to record, business information, you would see what company they're with, or what you might refer to it as agency. You'll see their name, and then in parentheses next to the name, you'll see their username. So if someone forgets their username for their login, you can just look them up in the system and tell them their username. Differently, we can't tell people their passwords. So there's a lot of security problems with us storing passwords in a way that you can see it. I will go over in a little bit how to reset someone's password. So, you're not locked out if they don't know their password, but you can tell someone their username. If they've forgotten their password, we'd have to go through the reset process because we can't just look up what their current password is. In this column, if they have an email in their profile, so you'll see, some people will have this little envelope icon, some people won't. One of Ronnie's accounts on this website doesn't have an email attached to it, so there's no envelope icon. If you click on the envelope, it is just a hyperlink to their email address. So depending on what device you're on, it might take a different action. So for example, I'm on a Windows computer. If I click on this envelope, it's going to open Outlook for me and start crafting an email to Michael Fisher using my personal email. If I'm on an iPhone, it might open, Google, Gmail, or it might open Apple Mail if you have that app set up. If you're on a MacBook, it might open, the Apple Mail that you're connected to. So depending on the device you're on, when you click on a hyperlink to an email, it'll open whatever your primary email tool is. If you come over to this next column, this is our membership column. And this is one that a lot of people forget about. We get a lot of calls saying, hey, how do I manage a member status? It's in this column right here. So we'll see what membership type they're currently in. So we've got 2 membership types set up here. We've got an agency type and we've got an administration type. So there's kind of a couple different membership types that we'll see here. We won't go over the full membership type configuration today, but if you have different membership levels or membership types, different prices that people can pay, it might tell you what membership type they have here. And then below that, you'll see their current status. So on this website, all of our members here are currently active. If we needed to, freeze someone or drop someone or manually set someone to expired, this is the column where we would take that action. So we're for Michael Fisher here. I'm going to use him kind of as our test dummy. If I click active, that is actually a button that we can click on. So clicking on active gives us a little pop-up for their membership status. For active members, we can take one of 3 actions. We can freeze them. So if Michael were to have broken a rule or something and we needed to freeze Michael, we could freeze him and I can hit save. And you'll see that Michael drops off this list. And now if I go search for frozen people, there's my frozen people right there. You'll notice Michael has members under him, and all of the kind of like people connected to Michael get frozen as well. So whenever you're changing someone's status, keep in mind that any people in an agency connected to that person, they all share a status. So Michael is the primary member in his agency over this account for Ronnie and over this individual member account. So we need to keep in mind that if we freeze the top level account, it's going to freeze the people below them as well. We might want to disconnect them before we freeze an individual person. I will be going over how to disconnect people. For frozen people, we can reinstate them. So that's the only action we can take for a frozen member. We can say, hey, we're done freezing you. We can reinstate you. And now we've got Michael back to, well, he's set to expired. We need to undo that. So with active members, once we unfreeze them, we can go back and see we're back to having an active Michael. So what we just did is we froze and then we unfroze Michael. We have two other options here. We have the option to drop Michael, and we have the option to set Michael to expired. Freeze and expire, all that happens is we just set them to that status and it just changes the status. And so now if I were to expire Michael, he would drop to the expired status, and it just simply changes that. If we were to drop someone, so we have clicked on an expired member. If we're going to drop them, meaning I want to, kind of effectively delete this person. I want this person out of my database. I don't want them to receive anything. We put sort of a barrier because we need some information if you're going to drop someone. First of all, we're going to ask you why you're dropping them. This is just a way to kind of put a stopgap in there to make sure you're not dropping someone for the wrong reason. If you're dropping them and you say, oh, well, their membership expired, they should be in the expired status, not the drop status. If you do have a legitimate reason for dropping that person, it's most likely on this list here. We have a relatively long list. I'm not going to go through each option. You can just select, why is this person being dropped? If you need to, you can even just say unknown, it's not listed. But if you have a member who passes away, you can select them as deceased. If you have a member who signs up for two different accounts and you need to drop one of the excess accounts, you can choose the duplicate option. There's a lot of different options of what we can do, of why we can set someone to be removed. And then we also have to choose when we're dropping someone, what do we want to do with their membership transactions? In most other statuses, we, are saying this member might come back, so we don't need to kind of like change anything with their transactions. They can deal with that when they come back. For dropped, what that means is we are not expecting this person to ever return to our website or to our organization. So we would need to say, what do we want to do with those membership transactions? Most commonly, we'll just delete them. We're not expecting to collect those funds for those outstanding transactions, so we'll just delete them, and it'll remove those transactions from the website. Occasionally, you'll have someone who signs up for a duplicate membership. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen from time to time. Maybe they changed email addresses or something, and so they signed up with a different email address. I did see a question. Someone said, like they set their website not to accept duplicates. There are ways to get around that. So if someone has two different email addresses and signs up with a different email address the second time, there's no way for ClubExpress to know that isn't just another person who happens to have the same name. There's several John Smiths. And so, there might be John Smith and he has, John Smith at myoffice.com and he has John Smith at gmail.com. And if he signs up with different email addresses, there's no way for us to tell that that's a different person, or that's the same person. So we might need to, kind of manually figure that out using the cleanup tools or something. But either way, if we find out that they have duplicate accounts, we might want to say, hey, you signed up for, an event on your duplicate account. So we need to move those transactions over to your primary account. So we might choose the option that says move transactions to another member. And so if we had Michael Fisher here, if he had two accounts, we could go look up the other Michael Fisher account and move all of those transactions from this account to that one. And then the last option is to do nothing. So if they have outstanding transactions, we can say, I don't want to change anything. I have seen from time to time, there will be people who will drop a member, but they are still expecting to get the check in the mail, or, they're still going to, say, hey, you bought something and you never paid for it. So we're going to, go find you and make sure that you pay for that, even though you're not a member of our organization anymore. So you could still record those payments for members that have been dropped. So that's where we can go to kind of change statuses. That is a very important place to go when we want to change a status. If you ever click on the status, so again, Michael Fisher here is the primary member in a membership that is connected to this. Ronnie has 3 accounts on the site, but Ronnie right here is connected to Michael Fisher. If I click on the status for a secondary member, or no, it's this Ronnie. Sorry, getting my Ronnies mixed up. If we click on the status for a secondary member, we don't get the options to drop because the secondary member's status is always tied to their primary. So the primary member is the one that does all the renewal. The primary member is the one who, chooses the membership type and all that stuff. What we do have the option to do from here is we can say, hey, I want to unlink these 2 accounts. So I can say, I want Ronnie to be her own member. So if I choose to promote to full member, it will disconnect this membership. So now Ronnie, if we look in the member column over here, this column right here, Ronnie is now a primary member. So I have disconnected Ronnie from Michael. So now Ronnie is her own individual member. So that is one way we could go about for an agency. If we say, hey, I want this person to be, separate from that agency. They left and now they're a member on their own. You can click on their status for the secondary to kind of unlink them in that way. I will go over in just a little bit the options for doing it a slightly different way. There's a lot of other options by clicking on this level changes tool up here. We could also just shift people around or reconnect two distinct people. There's a number of things we can do, but that is the kind of first attempt. So if you ever click on the status for a secondary member, you will only get the option to promote them for a full member. But keep in mind, whenever you promote a secondary to a full member, they will become an independent member, completely separate from any agency at all. So they would then become an independent member. If we just need to shuffle around who's the primary, we'll go through that later once we're talking about the member levels. So we can see what level they are in this column here. The next column over we have is their expiration date. This is when that member's membership will expire. We have, just a listing of different things. If that expiration is in the past, then obviously they've gone past their expiration date and they need to renew their membership. After the expiration date column, we get this column with a lot of mystifying icons. ClubExpress loves to kind of condense controls as much as possible, but sometimes that leads to a little bit of confusion about like, well, what does which icon mean? Anytime you see a kind of table with a lot of these little icons here, you'll almost always, in fact, I believe always see an icon in the very top right corner that you can hover over, and that's a little legend for us to then be able to see, okay, well, the pencil takes us to their profile. These boxes show us our mailing list categories. So this will always give you a way to go kind of look at and see what icon means what. So that way you can just get a quick preview on which one means what. I'm going to go through the different icons really quickly and show you kind of like what each of them does. I'm going to start with the second one. I'm going to circle back to the pencil. As I mentioned before, ClubExpress loves to order things in order of most usefulness. So the pencil will take us to the member profile, but that has a whole other can of worms. So before I go there, I'm going to cycle through the rest of these icons. This is our mailing list icon. This is one that doesn't get used quite as much. I don't see it get a lot of traffic. This is where we can come in and kind of manually change what categories a person belongs to. So if we say, hey, I know Michael's a donor, now he's on the donor mailing list, or Michael is a storefront customer and Michael, is one of our vendors, we can go in and check off, and now that person will be on that mailing list. And so they would, come up in reports on that mailing list. When I send emails to that mailing list, Michael would be on that list. Most of the built-in mailing lists here are managed automatically. So if Michael goes to the donation module and makes a donation, he will automatically get added to the donor list. So we don't need to come in here and check that for him. It'll happen automatically. Same for most of the ones here. If Michael volunteers through the volunteering module, he will automatically get added to the volunteer list. If Michael makes a storefront purchase, he will get added to the storefront customer page. So most of these are handled automatically. You can make your own mailing lists, and then you might need to manually add people to them. But I'll go over a couple other options for that later. But for the most part, these are managed automatically. You don't need to manually go press buttons for every single member. The next icon over just takes us to their membership biography. I'm not going to click on it because it'll just take us to their bio page, and we can do the same thing by accessing the member profile. So we'll take a look at a biography page here in just a second. But that would just take us to their membership bio as it would appear in the membership directory. This icon here, this is one that some organizations get a lot of use out of and some don't. This is our notes icon. This is where we can keep notes on members, and these are admin only notes. So if we need to take a note about a member that we don't need other people to get access to, we can take that note here. So if Michael Fisher is, really mean, I can leave a note saying, hey, Michael's really mean. And I can save that. And now you'll see that that sticky note icon changes. So now it is a green plus icon, meaning someone has left a note. And so now we know that Michael Fisher, any other admin who accesses the people manager, when they pull up Michael Fisher's profile, they'll see this little green check mark. And that lets them know, oh, someone has left a note. Any admin can click on this and see, oh, Michael is really mean. If we say, hey, actually, he's pretty nice, we can remove that. and save, and it'll go back to an empty notes section. So that is one of our kind of ways for keeping track of members. Keep in mind, if Michael is not an admin, then there's no way for Michael to go see the notes that are kept on him. These are private to admins. That does mean, though, if Michael was an admin, if I take a note about him and he's an admin, he will be able to see the notes about himself. So always keep that in mind if you're keeping notes. You don't want to put anything that you wouldn't be okay with people seeing, but it is private to admins. The next icon over is our charge credit icon. This is where we can come in and manually add a charge to a member or manually credit a member. So if we were to charge a member, we would say, hey, Michael broke a vase, and that was an expensive vase. So he needs to pay us, $150. And I could just come in here and record this charge, and it would charge Michael $150. You don't need to manually add charges for most things. So things like membership renewal or signing up for an event or making a purchase in a storefront or donating, all of those things are automatically created. The only time you would need to manually make a charge if it's for a charge that the website doesn't have the context to create a charge for. So again, all of those things like signing up for an event that has a fee tied to it, that will get automatically created. You don't have to do this. There's only very specific use cases where you would say, hey, there's something the website doesn't have context for, so we need to manually create that charge, i.e. like breaking a vase or something like that. The website has no way of knowing that, so we'd have to manually add that charge. Vice versa, if we said, hey, Michael's great and he donated a vase, of a $150 value, we can say, hey, we want to make sure that, you feel like you are being valued for that, or maybe he volunteered, went above and beyond or something. We can give a credit to that member, and this will add a credit like kind of like a gift card on the website. So anytime Michael, once I add that credit, if he renews his membership, it would use this credit before he actually has to pay. So and like it's not like a coupon, it's more like a gift card. So if the balance is not met, so if membership is only $75, then he would use $75 of that $150 credit and would still have $75 left over. So if we gave him $150, that might let him renew for the next 2 years, if it carries over. If there's a difference, let's say, membership is $100 and he spends $100 of that credit, he would have 50 left over. Next time he renews, he might still have $50. He would have to pay, the $50 difference. So he could use $50 of his credit and then pay another $50 to get up to that, $100 the next year. So that's how we can kind of go in here and either manually charge someone or manually credit someone in a way that the website would not do automatically. The black button we'll see here, you'll notice not everyone has this black icon. This is the renew button. Again, only primary members are the ones who need to worry about renewing their membership or changing their membership status, because the secondaries that they have under their account will always follow them. So if we look, for example, we just set up Ronnie to be a primary member. She's on her own now. Ronnie has the renew button. If we renew a member that is primary, so for example, Foreshta here, if we renew Foreshta, all of the secondary members under Foreshta would get renewed whenever we click that renewal button. So when Foreshta is renewed, all of her secondaries are renewed as well. Same for Michael. We as administrators can renew someone before they need to renew. So this button is black right now. When it is time for someone to renew, it will turn red. It doesn't change what the button does. It's just a color code to let you know if you see if you see this black button turn red, that means they are due for their membership renewal. That is all that change does. Clicking the button will take us to the renewal process no matter what. If it's black, that just means they don't actually need to renew just yet. This icon over to the right, you'll notice this is different depending on whether they are a primary or a secondary. If they are a primary, clicking on this button will show us the primary is Michael. The secondary members are, individual member, whoever that is. This member number 8 over here is individual member. If we come down to Foreshta and click on it, we'll see primary person is Foreshta. They have Ronnie and Tony as sub members. So these are the secondary members within their agency. If you click on that icon, so for the single person for a secondary, Clicking on this icon will take us to the membership profile for their primary. So for individual member here, if I click on this icon, it's going to take me into the member profile for Michael because Michael is the primary for individual members. So that's the individual member person right there. This is the member profile. We're going to circle back to this in just a minute. So if I click on, for Tony here, if I click on this icon for Tony, it takes us to Varesha. So it'll take us to the membership profile for whoever is in charge of their agency. And then lastly, we'll see two more icons. One that will only appear for certain people is this dollar sign icon. So the only people who will have this dollar sign icon are people that owe money. So Michael has clearly incurred some kind of charge. If I click on that dollar sign icon, it will take me to the payment page. So I can see here, Michael renewed his membership November 14th last year, but never paid for it. So I can see Michael actually owes $10 for his own membership, $5 for his secondary member, a total of $15. And I, as an administrator, can come in here and choose a couple options. I can say, hey, we received a check from Michael, so we can go ahead and mark that as paid. So if I received a check, I can enter the check number, 123. I can leave any notes about that payment if I want. And then once I record that payment, the dollar sign is now gone because I have said I have received that payment. In the actual member profile, I'll show you where we can go and look at past transactions and past payments. But that is, if you see that dollar sign icon, that is what that means. That also means if we use that filter I showed before, the with pending payment option, if I say with pending payment, yes, everyone that shows up under yes for with pending payment will have that dollar sign icon. So if you get a bunch of checks in the mail, if you're the treasurer or something like that for your organization and you're processing those checks on the website, you can pretty quickly see, hey, I got 5 checks. I can just go and say, show me only people with pending payment, and it should narrow the list down to just the people who have outstanding payments. And then the last thing here, this is the reports icon. And this does one of two things. For the most part, it's just going to print. This first option is the Zebra label printer. This is going to print their name and address for mailing. So if you have a label printer and you are printing out, mailing addresses for a person, that will print out a Zebra label printer mailing address. So it'll be a little sticker you can stick on an envelope so you don't have to write it out manually. These next two are two different style of invoices for what that member owes. If that member does not have an outstanding transaction, then these don't really do anything for you. If they have any outstanding transactions, you can choose one of these options and hit next to go ahead and run that report. And it will print out an invoice with things like their address, the mailing address for payment, what they owe, how much they owe. It'll give just an invoice of what their transactions outstanding are, and it'll give it to you as a PDF, and you can just print that and mail it to them. And you can, say, hey, you owe us money if you need to manually send it to them. Other times you can just save it as a PDF and email it to them and say, hey, here's an invoice for you for payment. You'll notice there are two different words. They have the same info in them. The only difference between these two invoices is that one of them is for a single window envelope and one is for a double window envelope. And that just means those little envelopes that you get in the mail all the time with the little plastic kind of clear see-through part. You can print these out in a way so that the mailing address of the member will appear in those windows. So you can kind of, again, save yourself the step of addressing the letter. You can just fold it in a certain way, stick it in that envelope, and the member's address should show right through. So you can just stick it in the mail. So that's all of our little icons. Now we're circling back to the most important one, which is this little pencil icon. This will take us into the member's profile. In the member profile page, we can do a lot of things here. So looking at the profile for Michael, we have basic member info. This is stuff like their email address, their first name, their last name, and we can click on this button to go in and change that. We can change that for members because we're administrators. We'll also see things like additional member data. So if you have any organization specific information you want to record about them, we can save that here. We've also got their biography listing. So this is their membership directory listing. And this is where we can come in and kind of, put in their profile picture, their banner image, their social networking links, write a bio about the member. And that is what would show up in the membership directory. More importantly to me, we have a number of options down here in the bottom section. This is where I spend most of my time for managing organizations. And there's a couple that I'll point out. Most of these, the member can manage for themselves. The ones that I like to point out are the member type expiration join date page. This is one. So under more member options, member type expiration join date. This is a page that only admins have access to. Members do not have access to change their membership type willy-nilly, but we do. We can come in here and say, hey, you joined the administration team, so I'm going to change your membership type to administration. Keep in mind, the membership type for this person will apply to all of their secondaries as well. So their entire agency would change. So if I change Michael Fisher, all of the people in Michael Fisher's agency would also have their membership type changed. For the expiration and join date, this expiration date, once again, expiration date will also apply to their entire agency because Michael's the one that renews the membership. So this is the date of renewal. All of the members below him would also be renewed when he renews. So his expiration date would always match his sub members. We can manually change an expiration date. If I go in here and add a year to Michael's membership, that is not the same thing as renewing. I am just extending his current membership a certain amount of time. So if someone says, "Hey, will you renew me a year? Here's, $100." Don't just come in here and change that number. The only time you should change a number is if their expiration date has actually changed for a certain reason. You could always go in and renew them to process that transaction correctly, but if you need to manually adjust someone's expiration date, you can do that as well. The last thing we have here is join date. This is a lot less important. This is just a date tracking field. It doesn't actually change anything functional about the member. And this one is actually specific to just Michael Fisher. So you can have sub members that might have a different join date from their primary. Also in the member profile, we can come in here and take a look at transaction and payment history. This is two places that I love to come visit. We can come in here and take a look at their transaction history and see, okay, he renewed his membership on this day. This transaction has been paid. And I can also click on a little receipt icon to take a look at the transaction details. And also on the transaction page, as long as it wasn't paid by credit card, keep in mind if something gets paid by credit card, it's kind of locked in the system because we have to maintain that credit card data. But if it's not paid by credit card, we could delete it. So if it's either in the status of unpaid or was paid by a manual entry system like cash or credit card or something like that, or it's not cash or check, not credit card, we could choose to delete that transaction entirely. Similarly, we've got the payment screen. This is where we track any available credits. So that page where I showed you where you could add a credit to a member, those would show up here. We can also see open payments. So we can see we recorded that check number 123. There's that information. We can click on the receipt icon to see, okay, this is applied to that membership renewal transaction. And we can go in here and make edits. And we can also delete that transaction. Once again, if it's a payment type credit card, we have to maintain that data so the trash can would disappear. But if it's a check, if we need to go in, hey, they actually sent us a $20 check, we need to, go in and fix that. Or, I got the check number wrong, I need to, fix that check number. The easiest way would just be to delete it. We can say, I want to delete this transaction. Because I'm deleting a payment for a renewal, it's going to say, what status do you want them to be? So if we're taking that payment away, we could set their membership to expired if they actually didn't send a check. But in this case, I just need to re-enter the check with the right number. There's no reason to set them to expired. I could set it to active, delete that payment. I can come back to the transaction page. And we can see now that I deleted that check payment, the status changed back to not paid because there's no associated payment. But now that it is a not paid transaction, I see this dollar sign again. So this is a fun time to point out in ClubExpress, there's like 5 different ways to do any one thing. So if we wanted to record a payment for a member, I could come find this transaction, click on the dollar sign icon again, and we're back on that payment page that we were on before. And we can say, hey, this time he actually didn't pay by check. He gave me, $15 cash. And I can come in here and record, cash received. I can record a cash payment. And now it's back to being paid in full. And again, I can come back to that payment screen, payment credit history, and I can see, hey, now it's a cash payment to the club of $15. So this is another way to come in and manage outstanding transactions. We also have things like tracking event history, seeing what events they've attended. For NIGP, I know that points tracking is a very important module that we developed for you. So you can also look at an individual member's available points. And we can also manually add points to a member. So if Michael, earned points by attending an event or something like that, we could come in here and manually add points. I believe we'll be going more in depth on the points tracking tool in a later training, but this is one of the places where you can come in and manually add points for attending an event or something like that. All right. Last thing I'll show you on the membership page before I go and hop over and do a quick overview of emailing is the reset password option. We're going to jump right over forums. I almost always let my members manage their own forum presence. And so that's, where a member could come and manage it themselves. I do love to point out, because this comes up quite a bit, is the reset password option over here. Whenever I hit reset password, it's going to say, are you sure? And if I were to hit OK, so if I hit reset password and I hit OK, I'm not going to do it right now. What it would do is it would generate a new password for Michael, and it would send an email to Michael's email address with that new password for him to log in. It'll also have a link to the website, so he can just click on that link, enter the new randomly generated password, and get into the website. So if someone's having trouble getting in, that is a great option. Every once in a blue moon, we have someone, who changed jobs or something like that, and suddenly they don't have access to their email anymore. If that were to happen, what you might want to do is come in here and either put in their new email address first, or we can take the email address out entirely and leave it out. And if there's no email address in the system, it'll say no email address linked to this account right here. And if I hit reset password right now, if I were to hit OK, actually, I'm going to go ahead and make Michael angry. I'm going to hit OK. And now it will scramble his password. It'll say your username is imfisher, and it will tell me, the admin, hey, your new password is, it's usually going to be, the first few letters of the first name and then a random number. And I can then just let Michael know, hey, Michael, I reset your password. Your new temporary password is this. And then he's, good to go log into the site. So if you have someone who doesn't have access to their account, you can give them this information manually as long as they don't have an email address linked there. So that's kind of a little workaround if someone's having email trouble or doesn't have an email for the time being or something like that. That kind of situation comes up from time to time. So that's a good trick to know how to do. All right, the last thing I'll show you in the membership controls, I've talked about it a handful of times, but I do love to point it out. Under membership options is level changes. So I've mentioned several times that Michael has sub members, specifically right now, individual member. But before, Michael had this Ronnie account connected and we accidentally disconnected it. So if we needed to reconnect Ronnie to Michael, the place we would do that is in this little member options level changes. When we click on level changes, we see a number of options of what we can do. The first thing that's selected is promote a secondary member to primary. This option will take a secondary member and make them the primary of that account. It will not, like we did before, it will not disconnect them. That is an option. We can unlink a secondary member into a solo member. So that's what happened before with Ronnie. We took Ronnie and disconnected her into a primary member. But if we were to promote someone, we could say, hey, I actually want individual member to be the primary. So right now, if we look over here, we can see this individual member is a secondary and Michael is the primary. If there is a change within an agency and we need to say, hey, this person is actually in charge of the agency now, or, let's say Michael is leaving the agency, we need to put someone else in charge. This promote option is what you would want to do. So we can come in here and I say, I want to promote a secondary member. I will come down to the bottom here and I will select which secondary member am I talking about. And right now I'm talking about individual member. Whenever you're searching, always search by last name. So member is the quote unquote last name here. I would select that person that I'm searching for. And so now I've said I want to promote individual member. And if I hit save, nothing drastically changes. But if we look at individual member now individual member
is the primary, and it changes Michael to the secondary. So you'll see the icons have changed as well. So for individual member, now we can see individual member is the primary and Michael is now listed as the secondary. So if we had a case where Michael needed to leave, now we could come in here and we could separate Michael into his own membership and we could drop Michael if he's leaving the organization. We know how to do all those things. We've gone over those things. So now that's how we would set someone else up as the new primary of that agency. If we need to swap that back, let's say, hey, now we've separated out Michael Fisher, but he's actually back, and we do actually want him to be the secondary member to individual member here. We can connect them back together. So let's say we want to put this agency back together. We've got Ronnie being a primary here. We've got Michael being a primary. We've got individual member being a primary. These are three disconnected members in their own kind of individual memberships. If we want to connect them together, we can go back to our level changes and we can choose to link a solo member to a primary. So this is the next option down. When we choose this one, we'll see two options pop up. We'll see the option of who do we want to be primary and who do we want to be the member being linked. So for the member being linked, I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to put that member, individual member, I'm going to link that person back to Michael. So I'm going to set this back the way it was before. So let's go find Michael. There he is. So Michael Fisher, I will select. And so now what I've got selected here is that Michael is going to be the primary member. Individual member is being linked, and I will save. And now individual member has been set back to secondary. So we're back to where we started. Individual member is secondary. Michael Fisher is the primary. They are connected again. And we can see that by clicking on this icon over here. Individual member has been linked to Michael. And we can repeat that process again if we need to, go back and link this Ronnie account. We can do that same process. This time we're going to link Ronnie. That member number is 9. So we'll go find Ronnie Levine 9. There's a lot of Ronnies in the account. And we'll go find Michael again. So now we've selected Michael as the primary again, Ronnie as the secondary. And now we're back to Michael being the primary over Ronnie and individual member. There are other tools we can do. We can do the unlink process. So we can say, hey, I want to disconnect Ronnie. So this is that same thing we did before where we chose to promote. It's that same function. So if we click on the status and choose to promote a member, that is this function right here. We are unlinking someone into their own account. The only added control we get by doing it this way is we can come in here and we can find Ronnie, member number 9. And when we do it this way, we can choose what membership type we want Ronnie to be because Ronnie is changing from, a part of an agency member. Maybe she's just becoming a standard standalone member, not part of an agency. We could save that and disconnect Ronnie from Michael. We are unlinking. We also have two options here that are probably not going to be used by NIGP. So there are the options for things called tertiary. I do not believe tertiaries are used quite as much in NIGPs. Tertiaries are similar to secondaries, but tertiaries cannot log into the website. So tertiaries are usually reserved for organizations that have like family memberships, and the tertiaries are children. But they are just a different type of sub member. So you have the option to change a secondary to a tertiary or change a tertiary to a secondary. But again, these last two options I don't think will be used quite as much. All right. We're at an hour. I'm going to go a little bit over if that's okay. We've got this recording. I'm going to go talk about emails for just a little bit, and then we'll do a few minutes of Q&A. I tend to go over time. Sorry about that. But the nice thing is we do have this recorded. So if you want to go back and watch this, if you have to drop off, apologies for going long, but that is a curse that I bear. So let's go talk about emails for just a few minutes, and we'll do a bit of Q&A, and then we'll wrap it up. So if we head over to the control panel, we're going to leave the people manager for the time being. If we head over to the control panel and head to the communications tab, this is another place where being a beginner admin, emailing can be kind of daunting, especially because of the distribution list. So that's something I want to kind of poke at. So again, sorry, I'm in the control panel. In the communications tab, the emailing is one of our website modules because there is a member facing portion of it. We won't be going over the member facing portion. We're just going to go over um, how to actually send out an email to our members. So clicking on emailing, this is where we go to send blast emails to our members. If we want to start a new email, if we're not worried about managing old emails, all we have to do to start sending a new email is hit this add emailing button. Once we land on this page, a lot of people get overwhelmed right away. They see a lot of controls, a lot of boxes. I always tell people break it up into kind of three blocks in your mind. You've got basic information. And if we just separate that out, that is one section that we need to configure first. We've got our distribution list. That is our second section that we need to worry about. And then the rest of the stuff down here, the rest of the entire page is just for crafting our body. And if we're trying to send a simple email, this gets a lot simpler once you know one or two tricks. So let's start top down. We're going to come over to basic information. And for the basics, all we have to do is define, hey, who is this coming from? It's going to show you the default email address for your organization, which for this website is R. Levine. If you've used the emailing tool before, or you're an administrator, it'll probably preload your own email address. But once again, because I am super admin, it's going to preload just the organization email address. But I could say, this isn't coming from Ronnie. This is coming from, Devin. And we can put whatever email address we want here. And that is the email it will look like it is coming from. Sometimes we've had one or two people feel clever and they say, haha, I can make this seem like it's coming from someone else in the organization and get them in trouble. Keep in mind, it's relatively easy to tell that this didn't actually come from this actual email address. It'll essentially be kind of like care of, yada, yada, yada. So it'll show up as whatever email address I put here. So devin@nigp.org, which is not a real email. And then after that, it'll say, ClubExpress email server. So keep in mind that it's pretty easy for someone to suss out that that's not coming from coming from that person. So if I wanted to trick people into thinking it came from someone else, that's more not actually truly possible. Then we say, who is this coming from? This is just as before, same name. So we would say, hey, this is coming from Devin. We get two options. When are we sending this? Now or on a future date? So if we choose now, whenever we finish up this entire email and at the bottom of this page say ready for delivery, that's when the email will go out. If I choose on a future date, when I say I'm ready to send this, it will hold the email until that time. So I can say I want this email to go out, tomorrow at 9 a.m. And it's going to use whatever time is set up for your organization. So this website is built on Eastern time. So it'll send out 9 a.m. Eastern time. And then I set a subject. I would put, whatever subject is relevant to this email. You do have the option to CC or BCC people. Those are not really necessary. We're going to control who we're sending this email to later on. Occasionally, people will use this CC tool so that everyone can see, oh, this is a visible person that this was sent to. BCC is a lot less useful because obviously we could control who it's sent to with the distribution list option. So the only time BCC gets used if you really need to send it to a manual email address that maybe isn't in your membership, isn't in your database at the moment, but it probably is. So you can kind of usually skip over BCC, but CC, you might want to CC like your entire board so that people can see it's got, board of directors visibility or something like that. For the content option, you pretty much always want to leave it HTML. If you choose plain text, then you lose all abilities to do things like fonts and hyperlinks and pictures and everything. Colors, all of that goes away. If you just do plain text, all you get is just that plain text. So pretty much always leave it as HTML, even if you're not going to use like fancy fonts and stuff. HTML is still recommended because it gives you access to like making something bold even. For these three checkboxes, I usually recommend a very specific, option. I check the last two. I do not check set urgent. I don't set urgent hardly ever. The reason for that is if you send a lot of urgent emails, you will start to get caught up in spam filters because only like the only people who send, every email as urgent are usually people who are sending a lot of spam emails. So that's a quick way to start getting caught up in spam filters. So I would only use the urgent flag if it is something truly urgent. If you are sending an email that needs to get read today and everyone really needs to know, and that only happens once or twice a year, yeah, go for it. You can set an urgent flag if it truly is that urgent. But otherwise, I would try not to send that other than once or twice a year, like I said. The next two options, track opens. I love this option. It is a great way to see roughly how many people have opened your email. I will say, do not take this as true perfect data. There are some edge cases sometimes where if we are tracking who has opened the email, it's not perfectly accurate, specifically with Apple and specifically with iPhones. If someone is using the iPhone email app, there are privacy settings that they can set that will not report that it has been read, even when it has. So, if you set this track opens option and then you go back and look to see who's opened it, and you see, hey, 85% of people have opened this email, it's probably closer to like 86 or 87 because a handful of those people may have opened the email on an iPhone with certain privacy settings set, and it's just not reporting back. So don't take it, as I would say, like, don't take it as hard fact, but it's a great way to see, hey, roughly 50% of people open this email. Or if it only says like, 10 or 15%, you might want to say, at your next member meeting, say, hey, keep an eye out for our emails. We notice that not a lot of you are opening them. If you do the track open option, you do get the option to resend the email to people that have not opened it. So you can say, hey, 1 or 2 days later, it'll just send the same email again, but it will exclude people that have opened it. So if we get the report that someone has opened that email, when we resend it, we will not resend it to someone who has reported as reading it. They don't have to do anything to get marked as reading it. It just kind of tracks it in the system. For personalization, this will allow you to do things like, hello member, and it'll fill in their first name. So I always turn that on. Even if I'm not going to use it, it doesn't hurt to turn it on. So if you don't use it, you can still just turn it on and it'll be fine. So we'll save that. Once we have our basic info saved, you'll see that it changes to a little green exclamation or a green check mark instead of the red exclamation point. So now we know that that part has been configured and is ready to go. The next thing we need to do is our distribution list. And this is where things get a little daunting for a lot of admins. If we click on the distribution list, you get two options here. You can use a saved distribution list if you have any saved ones. On this website, we don't have any saved distribution lists, and that's great because now we say, well, we need to create our own. When you are setting up a distribution list, when you are creating a new list, what we are doing is we are setting criteria. So we can, but I don't recommend setting a list of people we want to send it to. The best thing to do is set criteria. So this is going to say, who is this email going to? And you see this big long list of a bunch of different parameters that we can send people to. I'm not going to go item by item, but what I will tell you is most commonly people are sending to, all active or all something. So we can say, I want to send to all. If you highlight this box up here and just start typing, you'll see things with that option in it. So if I say I want to send it to my active members, we can say, oh, great. Active, primary, and secondary. Active members in a specific group. Active primary only. Active and expired primary. There's a lot of different options in here. So I can say I want to send it to, active and expired, just my primaries. So that's going to be only the people running agencies. And then I can also filter by subgroup. This may not show up on your site. This is because we're on the top level website. So we have the option to, filter by subgroup. So that is one you don't have to worry about quite as much, but we could say, I want to send to all of my active and expired primaries. And I can add that to my list. It is important to hit add. That is a button that some people forget. And the reason we have this add button is because we can actually stack these. So I'm sending it to my active and expired primary members. But let's say I also want to send this to all of my non-members. So I can say all non-members as well. So I can come in here and I can say all non-members and I can hit add. So now this email is going to all of my active, all of my expired primary members, and all of my non-members in my database. And I can keep adding to this list. I can say, I also want to send it to, you know, let's say all of my, come on, status. Website's being a little funny for me. I can say I want to send it to all of my frozen members. I can get weirdly specific with how I want to stack all of these up. And I can say now I'm sending it to all of my frozen members. I can also choose this exclude option. So if I were to remove these, and let's just say I only want to send it to my active members, I'll say I'll include my secondary. So this is going to be pretty much all of my members. So all of my members that are active, primary or secondary, I want to send to all of them, add. I can also get specific and say, let's say I'm having a surprise birthday party. That's the only example I really come up with this, but it's a good example. So let's say we're having a surprise birthday party. I can come down here and I can say I want to select one member from the database. And so I can say I want to choose a specific person. And let's say Ronnie Levine. And it's Ronnie's birthday. And we're having a surprise birthday party. So I will exclude Ronnie. And so now it will generate this list of all of my active primary and secondaries, and then it will check that list and remove Ronnie's email from the mailing list. So now it's going to exclude Ronnie. And that way I could send an email out to everyone but this person. And then I can come down here and I can save this if I want to. And I can say, this is for Ronnie's birthday. And I can save that option. So now I've got my distribution list set up. But the next time I'm making an email, if I come up to my saved distribution list, because I checked this and named it Ronnie's birthday, now I have Ronnie's birthday on the list and I can just select that. So if I need to send that email again and it's about the same birthday party, I can just use that same list over again and hit save. So I don't have to go through that process. So creating a handful of saved distribution lists is a great way to save yourself the elbow grease of, you know, uh, going in here and creating that list every time. You don't have to create the list every time. Once you get a couple saved ones, this gets a lot easier to do. You just choose the list you want that you named yourself. So now that we've got our basic info set up, we've got our distribution list set up, all we have to do is worry about what does the email contain. I'm going to go over kind of like the real basics. Most of these are self-explanatory. You can do columns of text, you can do images, you can do social media links, you can make manual links. But for a very generic email, this first one, front and center, a column of text. I just want one column of text. I can just grab an element and drag it over. So again, I'll delete that and just grab a column of text, drag it over and let go. And this is the body of my email. And if I want to type in that text, this element, I would just hit this little pencil for edit. And I get this little text window and I can say, hello members, yada, yada, yada. I can, whatever email I want to fill out, you know, thank you. So that is, very generic. Just make a little email message that I'm sending out. And then down here at the bottom, I can choose a couple of save options. I can say I'm ready to go. And again, I set this for a future date. So when I hit ready for delivery, it won't send it right away. It would send it on that future date. In the basic info, if I had said ready to deliver now and I hit ready delivery, the email would then immediately go out. Something I do before sending an email is I always hit send test. And this will let me send a test version of this email so I can see what it looks like in my inbox. It's a great way to also send it to up to 3 more emails. So if I want to have someone proofread my email, I can just send it to them without having to send it to everyone. I can send it to a couple people, hit send tests, and they can proofread it and say, yeah, it looks good. And then you can come down here and hit ready for delivery. When we're editing the body of our email also, I'll jump back. One thing we can do, because we turned on that personalization option, for this email that says hello members, I can personalize it. So at the top section up here, I can say, instead of saying hello members, I have a lot of tags in here. The most commonly used one is just first name. So I can select first name, put my cursor where I want that to go and hit insert. And so now you've got this little squiggle, squiggle, first name underscore squiggle, squiggle. Those little squiggles and all of this will get taken out when I send the email. And when I send this out, obviously Ronnie's not getting this email because it's her birthday. But when I send this, when Fareshta gets it, it'll say hello Fareshta. When I get it, it'll say hello Devin. When James gets it, it's going to say hello James. It'll replace the first name with the first name of the recipient of the email. So that is a great way to personalize your emails. You can get fancier with that. You can say, hey, this is an email about expiration. So I can come in here and say, hey, just a reminder that your memberships are expiring on expiration date. And that way people know to, check out for their expiration date, and it'll fill in with that person's expiration date. So this is all personalized information that you can fill in about the member that will load it in automatically. Again, most times we just see people using this first name option just to make the emails feel a little bit more gentle and targeted. And then you're ready to go. There's a couple things we could go over in the future about like saving templates, but for the most part, if you're just sending general emails, that's all you really need. Basic info, who's it going to, and then body of the email. All right. As always, I have gone well over my time. Thank you for being patient with me. I know Ronnie was taking notes through this. We've got the recording that's going to be up on the YouTube channel. I think we're going to save Q&A because I went over time, but Ronnie has the chat recorded, so she's going to go through some of the Q&A and answer some of the questions either directly or we'll kind of keep them public. We'll see how we do that. But I will make sure that the recording of the chat gets to you, Ronnie. Thank you guys for being patient with me, and we will get your questions answered, and we will see you later. Bye, everyone.